It was supposed to be the perfect arrangement. Sabrina Wells, 27, ambitious, gorgeous, and tired of chasing paychecks, had finally found her shortcut. His name was Gregory Langston, a 45-year-old tech millionaire with no kids, no ex-wife, and an odd request: marry him for 1 year. No strings. No expectations. Just a contract. And $5 million. Sabrina wasn't in love, she didn't even pretend to be. She only knew she was done living in her tiny studio apartment, working double shifts and scraping for rent every month. Gregory, with his kind but distant eyes and a house that looked like it belonged in a movie, felt like her ticket out. They met through a private matchmaking service, the kind that doesn't advertise and requires background checks. She was briefed on the terms: 1-year marriage, full discretion, public appearances when needed, and no questions asked. In return, a bank transfer after the divorce, clean and legal. Their first meeting, Gregory slid the contract across the marble table in his penthouse kitchen. "I don't want complications," he said, his voice calm but weary. "I just want peace. You'll have your own space, freedom to live as you please. Just don't fall in love." "I can't offer that." Sabrina laughed softly. "Trust me, I'm not here for fairy tales." He studied her for a moment. His eyes lingered on her hands, delicate, nervous fingers tapping the edge of the contract. Finally he said, "Then sign it." She did. The wedding was small, quick, and cold. A justice of the peace. No vows. No guests. Just paperwork and a camera for legal proof. And then Sabrina was Mrs. Langston. She moved into his stunning lakefront home where silence filled the hallways like fog. Gregory worked in his study all day. He barely spoke during meals. That night, he disappeared into the guest wing. Sabrina didn't mind. She shopped, visited spas, and smiled for the occasional charity photo. The money was real. The lifestyle was luxury. But the man? He was a mystery wrapped in solitude. Until one night she accidentally walked into his private office, only to find a folder open on his desk. Medical records. Page 4. Her hands trembled as her eyes scanned the words. Inoperable. Terminal. Estimated life expectancy, 9 to 12 months. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't looking for a wife. He was preparing for death. And she had just married a man who was already slipping away. Sabrina didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her silk pajamas, staring at the ceiling of a bedroom bigger than her entire apartment used to be. The medical file haunted her, every word etched into her mind like fire. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. No treatment. No hope. Gregory knew. He had known all along. That's why he wanted a fake marriage. That's why he said no love, no expectations, just a clean deal. It wasn't just about peace, it was about dying with someone nearby, someone who wouldn't get attached. But now that she knew the truth, something strange began to twist inside her. Guilt? Pity? A sliver of humanity she thought she had buried? The next morning, Gregory sat alone on the patio, sipping his black coffee and gazing at the lake like he always did. He didn't even look up when she joined him. "You knew," she said softly. He glanced at her. No surprise. No panic. Just quiet understanding. "I assume you found the file," he replied. Sabrina nodded, sitting down beside him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want sympathy," he said. "And I certainly didn't want someone to pretend they cared just because the clock's ticking." She studied him differently now. His face had always looked tired, but she thought it was from stress. Now she noticed the way his hands trembled slightly as he held the cup. The way his shoulders curved forward like they carried too much weight. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I'm not heartless. I didn't think you were, he said gently. But I didn't want to take the risk. I've lived a life full of deals. I needed this one to be clean. For the first time, she didn't have anything clever or sarcastic to say. She sat there in silence beside the man she had married for money, who was quietly dying in front of her. Over the next few days, she found herself paying more attention. She noticed the bottles of pills tucked away behind kitchen cabinets, the way he winced when standing too long, the calls from his private doctor that he always took in another room. And slowly the distance between them began to shrink, not because of the contract, but because of something far less logical. Empathy. He wasn't the cold, distant millionaire anymore. He was Gregory, a man who once built an empire and now couldn't walk a mile without resting. And she, Sabrina, the gold digger with a plan, was starting to see him with new eyes. Eyes that didn't see dollar signs anymore, but the quiet pain of a man running out of time. Sabrina began to wake up earlier. Not because she had to, but because Gregory did. She found herself sitting at the breakfast table before he did, pouring his coffee just the way he liked it. First, he looked confused, then surprised, then quietly grateful. "You don't have to do that," he told her one morning. "I know," she replied, "but I want to." Something was changing between them, something neither of them dared to speak aloud. The silence that once felt cold now felt comforting. They didn't fill it with fake smiles or forced small talk. They simply existed together side by side. And in that stillness, Sabrina started to see things she had never seen before. She saw how Gregory's eyes lit up when he talked about the tech company he built from scratch, how he had funded dozens of scholarships under anonymous names, how he adopted a retired racehorse just to keep it from being put down. He didn't brag. He didn't boast. He just did what he could while he still had time. One rainy afternoon, they sat in the sunroom, watching droplets race down the glass windows. "I used to think dying would be the scariest part," Gregory said suddenly. "But it's not." Sabrina turned to him. "What is?" "Dying alone, without anyone really knowing who you were." She looked at him then, not as her ticket to luxury, not as the man who signed her a deal, but as a human being who had given everything, only to spend his final days in silence. "I know who you are," she said softly. Gregory didn't respond right away, but his fingers brushed against hers, almost unintentionally. They stayed like that for a long time, quiet, still, and gently connected. Sabrina no longer cared about the $5 million. She barely thought about the contract. The lavish shopping bags sat unopened in the guest bedroom. The spa appointments went unconfirmed. Her world, once spinning around money and comfort, now orbited something far less glamorous, but infinitely more meaningful. The man she had married for convenience was now the one man whose smile she looked forward to every morning, and the one whose absence already haunted her, though he hadn't even left yet. "Paris," Gregory said one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. "I always wanted to go." They were sitting on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, the sky painted with stars. Sabrina looked at him, her heart squeezing. "Why didn't you?" He gave a weak smile. "Work. Deadlines. Excuses. I kept telling myself there would be time. There's always more time until there isn't." That night, while he slept, Sabrina stayed up planning. She called private travel coordinators, medical concierge services, and even spoke to his doctor. She didn't care how much it cost. For once, it wasn't about the money. It was about giving him something he never gave himself. A week later, they were on a plane. He was frail now, thinner, slower. But the look in his eyes when they stood beneath the Eiffel Tower, pure wonder. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," he said. Sabrina held his hand tighter. So are you. They walked through cobblestone streets, took photos on old bridges, and sat in cafes sipping espresso in the cold morning light. Gregory smiled more in those days than she had seen in all the months before. But there were moments, sharp and cruel, when the illness reminded them it was still there. Like when he collapsed at the foot of the stairs in their Paris apartment, or when he coughed up blood in the middle of dinner. Sabrina never panicked. She just held him, whispered calm words, and did everything she could to make sure he never felt afraid. On their last night in Paris, he gave her a folded envelope. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Something I changed," he said. "After you started waking up early." Inside was a new contract. This one said nothing about divorce or payouts. Just had one line written at the bottom in his shaky handwriting. "To my wife, because she stayed even when she didn't have to." Tears blurred her vision as she looked at him. "I didn't want your money anymore," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why you deserve everything." Back in the States, things moved faster. Gregory's decline was no longer subtle. The house filled with quiet visits from doctors, nurses, and specialists. Sabrina was always at his side. She fed him, read to him, held his hand when he could no longer speak. And every night before he drifted off, she whispered, "I'm still here." 'Cause she was. Not for the lifestyle. Not for the wealth. But for the man she didn't mean to love, yet couldn't imagine living without. The end came quietly. There were no beeping machines, no hospital walls. Just soft sunlight pouring into their bedroom, and the gentle sound of wind brushing through the curtains. Gregory lay still, his breath shallow, his body fragile like paper. Sabrina sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're not alone." His eyes fluttered open one last time. "You stayed," he murmured. "I'll always stay," she replied, tears sliding down her cheeks. A faint smile crossed his lips. Then peace. Sabrina didn't cry loud. She didn't scream. She just laid her head beside his and let the silence settle around them. For a long time she stayed there, listening to the quiet. The man she married for money had become the only person who ever made her feel rich in something real. 3 months later, the house felt empty. Closets still held his coats. Kitchen still smelled like his favorite tea. But the soul of it, his warmth, his quiet laugh, his late-night humming, was gone. Sabrina didn't touch the $5 million he left her. Not yet. Instead, she found a letter in his drawer, addressed in the same shaky handwriting. My Sabrina, you came into my life expecting nothing but luxury, and gave me something no amount of money ever bought me, love. You made my last days my best days. I don't want you to feel guilt. I want you to live. Not just exist, but truly live. Start something. Build something. Help someone the way you helped me. My money was meant to buy me peace. But instead, it gave me you. I love you. Greg *. She cried for hours, holding the paper to her chest like it was the last piece of him she could touch. But then she stood up. And for the first time in her life, she knew what she wanted to do, not for the money, not for comfort, but for purpose. She opened a foundation in his name, focused on hospice care and travel grants for terminal patients who had dreams they'd never seen come true. She gave anonymous donations to families struggling with medical bills. She spoke at conferences telling their story, not the arranged marriage part but the love part. Transformation. People listened. They wept. They believed. Because it wasn't about how it started. It was about how it ended. And how a girl who once married a man for his money ended up honoring him for the life he gave her in return. Not in years, but in love.